secret to my mom that his second wife, Sally, was saying my mother stalked them. A hilarious plot twist considering both her and my dad stalked us. Often my father would chase my mom, even to work, begging her to talk to him. Meanwhile, I watched him whisk away, asking myself, why didn't I get begged? And right behind him was Sally. She was known to many as mean, aggressive, and vicious, which are extremely tricky words to use against a black woman. An entire history of women of color painted as angry for no reason, savage, nasty, and somehow conniving criminals while being absolutely lazy. When you are raised in a community where all other communities are trained to see you as disgustingly less, it can feel really tricky when one of your own actually is. She would take selfies outside our window and post it on Facebook, or leave voodoo trinkets by our door as if to say, I'm watching. The problem is she was watching the wrong wife. Florida, Texas, New York, and two in New Jersey, my father had taken up wives like he did real estate or fraudulent businesses in multiples. And Sally had no idea. I wonder if he tells her that you guys are having an affair so he could visit the Florida wife. I asked my mom sincerely. Sally's obsession to make her presence known made me feel oddly sad for her because she had so much rage and not 1 ounce of a clue. At the end of the day, she knew the direction, my father, but she preferred torturing and keeping him over leaving. And the problem is she inevitably tortured herself. Everyone always said he called her ugly because she was black, my mother declared, and it was true. My father had 5 wives, and all of them were Latina and oddly looked like each other. But to be honest, I was genuinely confused by his concept of aesthetics in women because he really liked men. Yeah, he said that to me, I replied. I remembered car rides where my father would drop the N word as if he was Tim Allen trying to do a hip hop record. His first excuse was that he had black children. His second excuse was that I did not understand how they were. She trapped me, Deandra. She trapped she trapped me, Hardin. She trapped me with kids and then threatened to put me in jail if I did not go back, he declared in a woe is me tone. The problem was that he was marrying his fourth wife during this I'm just a man one act. And Sally was so desperate to show that the man whom abused all of us was taking care of her kids, she did not realize he was still making more of them. But not with her. Not anymore. All right, let's heal. Let's discuss. So Sally was my father's, I think she was the second wife. And he was always making fun of her. And my father was extremely racist, but he would use the fact that he had black children and technically a black second wife to veil the fact that he was extremely racist and also to justify that he was extremely resentful, or at least he said he was, because he painted this whole story that she had trapped him with their firstborn and that was always threatening him with jail because he would stop paying for bills and he was trying to run away, but he was also an addict, so she should have had compassion. Like all these reasons. And he would paint it as it's because she's evil and it's because she's black. I think what confuses me in terms of the racism and sexism of my father and the overall chaos is that the whole time he liked men. And this is where it's really weird sometimes with DL behavior, this real hatred for women while having an understanding that when you have a need, especially as a man, it's a woman who's going to pick you up. It's a woman who's going to show up. It's a woman who's going to feed you when another man steals your meal. It's a woman who's going to clothe you when another man leaves you in the cold. And that was the relationship in terms of my father and women. And it's something that I talk about in the episode A Pack of Beards, this weird kind of hyper awareness that for being a man that was so chaotic and so hypocritical and so messy, he needed the very thing he hated to get out of the messes he made. And that was a woman. He hated his mom, but if he needed a brujeria or money, called her. He hated my mother. But if he needed like an empowerment speech or money, he called her. And I guess like I will never fully understand my father. And I don't want to get trapped in that, that old adage of, chasing down the snake that bit you to ask them why. You'll never fully know why. And I think that what I need to remember sometimes is it's good that I don't understand because it means I'm not like him. But it's also, I'm judging him from a perspective of what a wasted life, what wasted energy, what was the goal? And presuming, because my ultimate goal in life is to be happy, is to be healthy, is to be abundant. And my father genuinely liked being a con man. He liked being criminal. He liked that he had multiple wives at the same time and multiple drugs and multiple businesses. He liked living like this secret mob boss. And it confused me because that's not only not my style, but I would think if you like men and you're still having relationships with them, if you hate women but they still step up for you, like if you're still getting everything that you want, why are you so unhappy? Because I think that's where I get trapped. If you get he had to trap people in order to get their love, but once he got it, why did he continue trapping? And I guess it's addiction, he needed to consume the world. And I think, Sally was she was extremely malicious. And she was also married to this guy that didn't mind being racist to her in her face, because my aunts would tell me that he would call her ugly and say she's ugly because she's black and all these things. And and he would say it to me too. But I was a kid and I would do this, no, you're not supposed to say the N word, dad. Yeah. But it didn't really hit me, the vitriol of my father for all his wives, for my mother, for this wife, for me, for women. And it also didn't really hit me that this was not normal. I wasn't supposed to see his second wife outside my window and get voodoo trinkets. And then we have the sage and we have to light a candle. And I think what was really hard for me growing up and it was something that I would tell my mother, and I felt bad for feeling, but it was true. I felt like we were a part of the losing team. I felt like we were dealing with two really toxic people that were moving us like chess across their board. And my mother's mentality was, you know, God will protect us. There's such a thing as karma and we will win. And then she would rage over like a smudge on the floor. And it was absolutely overwhelming, abusive, and toxic and boring. When I look at my childhood, it was either the chaos of adults still acting like children, or these moments where I had to be a child alone and felt bored and kind of sad. I'm lucky that I'm very creative. I'm lucky that I was always really unique and good at finding ways to entertain myself, because I also understood invisible is safer in my family. But sometimes it wasn't even just sad, it was so boring because my father didn't want all his children convening with each other. So he would invent stories that my sister hated me, and it just it got too much. It got too much and it was loud. It was allowed. And it was really hard for me to understand this mother who was not protecting me from this guy that was my father, but had no problem smacking me with a hairbrush until I stood still so she could comb my hair. Meanwhile, I wasn't river dancing. I wasn't moving. Like it was, there was just too much toxicity being misdirected and misplaced. And I think what made me feel bad for Sally, despite her cruelty, was that my mother's mentality is that karma gets everybody. But I don't necessarily know if that is true in terms of bad karma for bad people because they're bad. Do you know what I mean? Like my father lived a very chaotic, negative life. What was his karma? What was his bad karma, technically? He was so used to being malevolent and manipulative and always living in the anxiety of getting caught and being called out for being these things. Like that, his karma was his existence. And that's where me and my mother would clash because I'm like, his karma is his existence. Where is our justice? Where is our safety? And then what I didn't realize is that my mom was a coward and my mother was using me to feel really big in a way that others made her feel small. I was, do this, do that. You have to go here. She would even call my name in the streets like a dog, like, get over here. And then this woman would curse at her, and she was a mouse, quiet. And it was really, really, really frustrating. And I think when I found out that my dad was DL and had had men in his life, it just confused me even more, turning women against each other, turning women against themselves. Like, for what? Like, just buy out Fire Island, do a pride weekend, put some glitter on your face, and call it a day. It's one of the things that really trips me up, especially in terms of learning from my father, because your parents do teach you in more ways than one. My father lived a very inauthentic life, like to the max. He was just walking lies. And I, and he was unhappy for it. Like all the smiles were fake. And so was Sally. I think Sally thought that she, in some ways, cooked us, right? Like, I got him. He takes care of my kids. He sabotages yours. But he was marrying and having kids with other women. And she was so focused on us because it was my mother that had called Sally. Sally was the first wife my mother had discovered. And she called her and informed her. And this is what I found out in time. And I think my father and Sally rewrote it to, despite seeing the marriage certificate, that my mother was somehow some mistress. And now he was trapped, taking care of a love child. And I think I can't imagine my father didn't say, and my aunt confirmed this. Oh, I love her. She's so prettier than you. That's why I'm still with her. Telling that to Sally. But my father was also somebody who never really stopped. Like he would take a break from being crooked, or he would just hide it better. But he was a consumer to the max, addicted to sex, addicted to drugs, addicted to manipulation, addicted to fear. And it made me wonder how shattered Sally must have been herself to stop looking. Because I think that's what my father really hated and why he was so hard on me and my mom. We didn't stop looking. Like my father wasn't the type to just do it once, right? And we were right. He did it like 5 times that we know of. But Sally did stop looking. And it's something that I talked about in prior episodes. My father always picked wives. Yes, they were for the most part Latina. And they all kind of looked a little like my mom, to be honest, except for Sally. But they all came from traumatic backgrounds, whether it was familial, whether it was historical, racial. They all came from these backgrounds of really traumatized families. And they were set up and setting themselves up to be the ones that broke these generational curses. And my father came in and presented himself as somebody who was going to save them, only to trap them into being the one that had to save him. Because again, that my father's life, if you look at it, it was always women that pulled him out of messes and pulled him through. And to know that in the end it was just all DL behavior, I'm like, well, nothing matters. Nothing matters. Queer Eye season, it's the last season of Queer Eye premieres this fall. Like, what the, what? It was just, what scares me about the people that raised me and why sometimes I could be a little too overwhelmingly self vigilant and self healing. Like I could get too trapped and I got to heal and I got to be aware of me. Is that they really weren't. Like everybody, I was raised by ghosts. I was raised by the ghosts of inner children that were all, taking up adult bodies. Like nobody was mature. Nobody was happy. They were all just really good at pretending. And something in my nature wanted to be genuinely happy. And I had the worst teachers, or at least they taught me what not to do. So check out daddyrecovery.com and check out Hadleen on all music platforms.